Hey, what's up, Ego Hackers? Welcome to Cutting Edge Podcast. I'm your host, C.S. Joseph. This is the January 2023 episode. And tonight's show, we're going to be discussing Temple Influence and how that can meet the octagram. Temple Influence meets octagram. So, we've been discussing at length Temple Influence and kind of basically how within the four sides of the mind, you have various influences from all four of the temples actually hitting your own personal temple, which is the four sides of mind. I am an ENTP, for example, and honestly, I think we're going to be running the whiteboard this evening to actually demonstrate these points. Got my whiteboard pen here, which is pretty awesome. And I'm just going to move that out of the way. Just move that out of the way so I can get actually my access to my whiteboard over here. So there we go. So this show is kind of relevant because we're going to be analyzing exactly how you could utilize logic to understand where your temple influence is within your own personal temple, also known as the four sides of the mind within yourself, but then also show you how the octagram can actually manifest as a result of temple influence, and how, like whatever your octagram is, there's a certain side of your mind that is basically entirely ignored. So I'm UDUF. UDUF people ignore their subconscious, right? That's just kind of what ends up happening. UDUF people do that because they're heavily invested into their shadow. SDSF people are heavily invested into their ego, basically, for SDSF. So it ends up looking like the opposite, the opposite approach, because their investment is there. So that can end up becoming a problem, for certain people. But based on where your investments are in terms of your octagram and like the nurtural expression, nurture can end up basically showing different behaviors in terms of deadly sins, in terms of virtues, in terms of cognitive origins, basically, as well as shadow poles and aspiration poles. Basically, each of the temple wheels have something to offer. So we're actually going to be using myself as an example, and then we're going to be using Chris Taylor as an example. We may also be using our very own Robert Potts as an example, and maybe John Bodine. I don't know. It just depends on how loose I want to get with the show notes this evening. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. So I'm going to fire up the trusty whiteboard at this time. Temple Influence. Meets octagram. Cool. Excellent. All right. So let's just use myself as an example. We're going to go right here. Okay. So here are my four sides of a mind. I'm just going to, let's actually just use this right here. I'm just going to say, red is heart temple, right? Can you just remind me what the colors are real quick?
Red is heart, soul's blue.
Soul is blue.
Mine is green.
Okay, so, and red is heart, and then soul is blue, which means my soul temple is INTJ. Body temple is orange. Okay, so ISFJ is orange. Okay, and then what's my superego one again? ESFP would be mind temple, which is green.
Green.
Okay, yeah, ESFP is green.
Okay. Do you want your octagram diamonds?
No, it's fine. That's fine. All right, so green equals mind. Just so that y'all can follow along here. Orange equals body. Okay. Red equals heart. Cool. And then blue equals soul. Just for the hell of it. Now let's get back to black here. Okay. So these are my four sides of the mind, and ultimately my four sides equals the heart temple. So I am going to, so 4SD equals heart. All right. So I am in the heart temple. Yes. I am in the heart temple. Okay, so yeah, here's the heart temple. Now, a couple things that we need to be aware of when determining all this. So just a couple of notes here. So let's see. Let's put these notes over here. So heart plus body equals an animus relationship. Okay, soul and mind also is in an animus relationship. Animus relationship basically means they are subconscious to each other, basically. And then we have soul plus heart. These are shadows to each other. Okay, so they have an unconscious relationship. And then mind plus body is also shadow relationships as well. Okay, so these are the rules. You must pay attention to the rules. Okay, these are the rules. Very important rules. Do not lose sight of the rules. Okay, this is how you calculate temple influence. Okay, temple influence, right? This is how you calculate temple influence. Do not forget that. Now we're going to do something crazy. Okay. So then, so within the ENTP, we have the satisfaction origin. Got it? Within the ISFJ, we also have satisfaction origin. Okay. And then also within the INTJ, we have reverence. Okay. And then reverence over here. Reverence. Gross. Apparently I can't spell. Okay, so you got to understand the temple influence rules. And now we're going to do the deadly sin, living virtue approach. Okay. Okay, let's go here. I ran out of room there on the top, so we're just going to have to deal with it. You know, horrible whiteboard experience, right? Okay. All right, so let's do, we'll do red. So we have compassion right here. And then at the bottom, we obviously have envy. Okay. We have envy. We have compassion. Okay. Right? I'm sorry. These are all wrong. Let me fix this. Okay. All right. Cool. Let's get back to our red ink. Okay. So compassion, and then we have our shadow pole, which is over here. So this is malevolence. Okay, and then this over here is fanaticism. Okay. So let's go to the ISFJ side. This is where it gets a little fascinating. So what is the origin over here? Well, this is actually the body temple. Body temple origin. So let's see here. 1 second. Origin of, yeah, so it'd be discovery. So hold on. Actually, 11's fanaticism, envy, compassion. Yeah, and then I have to actually get the other origin there as well. So we have justification, basically. Justification is up here as well. This is where it gets a little crazy, guys. This is where it gets crazy. And then we have, oops. Let's get the black here. Let's get the black going. All right, cool. So we have wrath. Oh my God. Pay attention. Okay. Let's see. I need to take a second here. Okay, so the point is I'm trying to make here is that you have justification and satisfaction that are coming out of the ego for like the ENTP, right? Okay. And then the ISFJ sign, you have the body temple origins, which ultimately are purpose and then discovery. Okay. Discovery. Okay. And then mind temple, and this is like an ESFP that's influenced by the mind temple, which is fascinating. So you have authority, and then you have validation. Okay, and then over here with the soul temple, there we go. You have justification over here. There we go. There's my mistake. There's just so much to remember all at once, you know what I'm saying? So then you have justification, and you also have intimacy. Reverence is actually up there. So, cool. And then for each of these origins, you have their associated deadly sins and living virtues coming out at the same time. So reverence, but beneath reverence, obviously, there is vainglory, being vain, and then modest at the top, naturally, and then aspiration, pull of reverence versus shadow pull of reverence. So you have egotist, and then you have desecration. Okay. So basically, this is the temple wheels. You have 2 temple wheels here, 2 temple wheels here, purpose, naturally, and then you have greed. Oops. Let's just get rid of that. Going into the orange. You have greed, deadly sin, for example, discovery, and I'm not gonna put out the rest of the polls or anything. I'm just gonna focus. Let's just do deadly sins just for the sake of this discussion. But I just did the first here in the ego to show you that everything is present. So we have gluttony here. Okay, gluttony, and then let's do the super ego one. So sloth, and then on validation, you have pride. Okay. And then for the soul temple, you have lust, and then you have wrath. Okay. Just from a deadly sin perspective. I mean, we might add more than that, but yeah, just so you guys can see. So this is basically what temple influence is mapped out within a person. Okay, so we're just using me as an example. I'm an ENTP, right? So my ego overall still is the heart temple. Okay. Or my mind is still the heart temple. ENTP, ISFJ, INTJ, and ESFP at the level of the 4 sides of the mind. Okay, that is what's happening. Okay, and I am the heart temple. However, within my own heart temple, there is still the heart wing. There is still the body wing. There is still the soul wing. There is still the mind wing within my own heart temple, within my own head, because the 4 temples themselves have like little embassies or rooms attached to them within my heart temple, within the 4 sides of my own mind, basically. And they are exerting influence within my own personal temple, within my own personal 4 sides of my mind. Each of the 4 temples themselves are exerting influence. Obviously, so the temple that I have inside my head, imagine it's a building, okay? And within this building, it has different representations. So let's draw that out for a second. Let's draw it out, okay? So here's my brain. It is a building, right? Okay? And it is a building of 4 rooms. Now this happens to be it is a heart temple. Great. It's a heart temple. Nice. But inside that heart temple, guess what? Heart temple has its own room in here. Nice. It's got its own room. Great. And then body temple has a room as well. And then we have soul temple. It has a room inside of my head, right? And then obviously mind temple also has a room. Okay? And it has to follow these 4 rules. If you go back to the Temple Influence rules, you have heart plus body is always in an anima relationship. Soul plus mind is also always in an anima-animus relationship. But then you look at soul versus heart, it's always in a shadow relationship. Okay, mind versus mind plus body, it's also always in a shadow relationship. So another way of, what does that mean? Okay, so let's do so these are always across from each other. Okay, across. Whereas this is always above or below, right? Above or below, above or below, in terms of like how we're representing them on paper. Okay, are you guys following here? Are you guys paying attention to this? Like this is super fringe stuff, hence why we're doing a cutting edge episode on it, because of how fringe this is. But this is super fringe. So you guys paying attention? Is anyone like still awake right now? Like what is the audience even doing? Okay, let's pay attention here. So looking at my brain, imagine it's this box, this building, this temple building, okay? But inside of this temple building, there are still 4 rooms from which each of the temples themselves are exerting influence in my brain over the 4 sides of the mind. So that's basically how it is, which means technically we have all of the cognitive origins in our head, which means technically we have all of the temple wheels in our head, including all of the deadly sins, all of the living virtues, all of the shadow poles, and all of the aspiration poles present in our brains at all times. Because each of the individual temples are exerting influence over the 4 sides of the mind. And it happens to follow the Temple Influence rules, right? Which is heart plus body equals anima. And you represent them from across each other, okay? Soul and mind are always across from each other. Also, anima-animus relationship. Soul and heart, they are always shadows of each other. So they're either above or below. And the mind and body is also shadows of each other. They're above or below. Which means the soul could be the ego or the heart could be the ego, and then the other is the shadow. The mind could be the ego or the body could be the ego. The other one is the shadow, right? They are above and below opposites, whereas heart and body is side-to-side opposites, soul and mind side-to-side opposites, soul and heart above and below opposites. That's basically how you represent this on paper, okay? So that's where it is. Hand orange covering eyes. I literally don't understand what that means. Okay. So the point is that you have all this information. You have all this in your head, and every single person has all this in their head. Now, granted, if you're an ENTP, obviously satisfaction and reverence from just a regular heart temple influence, because it's your main temple, because guess what, folks? That's your freaking ego. Okay, so let's use purple to represent that. This is the ego. This is the shadow, also known as the unconscious. We'll just put unconscious here. We have the superego, also known as the demonic inverse. And then we have the anima animus right here. Anima, also known as the subconscious, right? In this side, right? Guess what? I have all of this here. Now, while granted, just from a primary perspective, because this is my ego, obviously my main origins is satisfaction and reverence, obviously. Because my INTJ shadow is all about reverence. And as much as my ego is all about satisfaction, right? So still, satisfaction and reverence are my main origins, right? And that's how what we focus on in terms of what people seeking out of life or how people become happy. That's kind of where that's coming from. It's really ego focused. That's why we have this thing called egocentrism. Egocentrism, also known as solipsism. Okay, this is why humanity overall is a feminine race. Overall, humanity is technically a feminine race because we are solipsistic as a race. We focus on ourselves first before we consider other people. Whereas you have an idealistic race, also known as the angels that God created, right? The angels, the angelic race, they are an idealistic race, so their brains, they focus on others first before they consider themselves, okay? It's different. That's how it works, okay? From a metaphysical explanation, using a metaphysical model as to how that works, okay? Yes, that's pretty fringe. No, I can't prove that scientifically. don't care, because everything, when you're using logic, everything that you observe in nature has, as in the concrete, has a metaphysical counterpart that can basically be a mirror image. Okay, so that's how that works. Okay, and ultimately the angels were created to fulfill the expert sensing needs of the creator, and humanity was created to fulfill the expert intuition needs of the creator. So whatever, that's a whole other discussion. If you want to learn more about that, go watch season 17 on the YouTube channel, and you'll understand a little bit more from that perspective. But the bottom line is, this is actually how temple influence actually works. Okay, you can't understand temple influence without understanding these little pieces. Okay, so they always follow these rules. Okay, now granted, I'm still wrathful, I'm still lustful, I'm still slothful, I'm still prideful, I'm still greedy, I'm still gluttonous. Okay, I have all of these things in my head. However, how do I know which of these things are primary versus secondary? How do I know which temple is influencing me the most? These are the questions that end up plaguing someone once they understand how temple influence actually works and they understand these rules. How is it even possible? And I'd like to give a special thanks to John Bodine for coming up with this color directions for proper visual aiding, and helping us understand where it comes from. I think that's great. But here's the thing. How do we know? How does this work? Okay, so I'm actually going to show you guys how octogram, a person's nurture, actually directly impacts the temple influence within the four sides of the mind, so that you yourself can actually understand which cognitive origin, which deadly sin, which shadow pole, which aspiration pole, which living virtue matters to you the most. And this can help you identify actually some of your biggest hang-ups in your life. Biggest hang-ups, okay? And we're going to be doing some specific examples as to what that is. So we're actually going to be analyzing multiple people to look at people with different problems, okay? And that's how we're going to be doing this. Okay, so let's check this out. So let's prepare the thing here. I need to keep the temple rules up here. Let's get rid of this crap. Cool. All right. Okay. So let's actually look at Chase's head for a second. We're going to put Chase right here. Okay. Cool. All right. We're going to do Chase. The ENTP. Cool. Then we're going to do... Let's do Chris right here. This is ENFP. Okay. So now we're going to represent octogram by the color purple, just to keep it on theme. We're gonna actually is that a good idea? No, we're gonna represent it by teal. We're gonna represent octogram by teal. Okay, cool. All right, so let's actually let's look at the specific colors one more time. So I'm heart temple, so which means heart temple's in my ego. Okay, and then we have to observe specific rules here. You know, so obviously from a heart temple perspective, this is what it's going to look like. So let's fill in the colors here. So we're going to be using this little color model here to do this. Now, when doing Chris, things are a little bit different, okay? So Chris is soul temple first, okay? So blue actually goes up here for Chris. If we have time, we'll do some more. We'll do some other people as well. Probably get some in there, maybe some John Bodine in there because he's sexy AF. And then let's see here. Let's get some orange going here. Remember, orange always has to be the opposite side of red. Okay. All right. So. All right. So let's see there. So I am UDUF, right? So let's get this going in here. So I'm UDUF from an octogram perspective. Chris also is UD UF. Okay, so this matters. This matters a lot. Okay. So, okay. So then UDUF. All right. So UDUF, unconscious developed, unconscious focused. All right. So let's look at this here. So granted, UD, right? UDUF. So I'm unconscious developed. So we're going to put a little dot down here. And I'm unconscious focused. Okay. Chris is the same. Conscious developed, unconscious focused. Right? And then we're also going to understand something very important. I still have my heart, temple, ego going at the same time. And Chris has his soul, temple, influence as well. Okay? All right. What does this mean? So if you look in the perspective of, let's see here. Let's actually do some black up here. What's the deadly sin of my subconscious? Well, it's gluttony. What's the deadly sin of Chris's subconscious? It's sloth. What's the deadly sin of Chris's unconscious, right? Well, if you have mind temple, so mind temple, that would be body temple. So that would basically be greed. Okay. He's got greed. All right. What is the deadly sin? Oh, also sloth and sloth and pride. All right. And then greed and gluttony down here. There we go. And then I also have greed up here. Okay. And then we have for this one, it's also sloth and pride. Okay. All right, sloth and pride. Great. And then okay. So sloth and pride, great. And then for the heart temple side, we have its deadly sins is vainglory, and then also envy. We'll get that down here. Vain and envy. And then also for soul temple side, we have lust and wrath. Lust and wrath. Okay. So basically you all could see, and this is just from a deadly sin perspective, but for this particular analysis, you can walk through all of it. For it doesn't matter. You could do this with living virtues. You could do those shadow poles. You could do it with aspiration poles. Okay? You have this capability. You just apply the temple wheels to the four sides, and any aspect of the temple wheels can be compared and contrasted. But once you know their octogram, and by the way, in order to, how do you actually type somebody with octogram? Okay, this is not something I've really talked about very much, but I will reveal the general idea as to how to type somebody by the octogram right now. The general idea. And that is the following. Okay, so shadow pole versus aspiration pole. If they are closer to their shadow pole, they are unconscious developed. If they are closer to their aspiration pole, they are subconscious developed. Okay? So whichever pole they are determines their development. Their cognitive development is determined by whichever pole they are closest to. Okay? That's it, right? To determine their cognitive focus, it is whether or not they are closer to their deadly sin or they are closer to their living virtue. Okay? That's it. Cognitive focus equals whether or not the person is closer to their deadly sin or their living virtue. Note that cognitive development doesn't change very often in a person's life. It is very rare. And when it can change, it can be extremely traumatic or not. Usually is very, very traumatic. Very difficult to change cognitive development. Okay? It just isn't a thing. Cognitive focus, however, can change all the time. It can change with a paradigm shift, a new relationship with somebody, or a new job, or a death of a family member. Cognitive focus can change on a whim. When I started this YouTube channel, I was UDSF with my octogram. The day that I found out was pregnant with our son, that was the day that started the process of me switching from my cognitive focus down towards UF from SF, okay, from subconscious focus to deadly sin of envy, right? So I went further away from my compassionate cognitive focus to my deadly sin of envy. And that process basically completed on October 17th, 2021. I remember the exact event, the exact paradigm shift that actually happened. And on that day, I broke my foot and failed the Krav Maga yellow belt test, basically on that day. It was extremely painful for me and extremely embarrassing. Oh my God. Ouch. That sucked. It sucked bad. Okay. So that's a huge issue. It was a huge problem for me, and then those life events basically changed me from UDSF to UDUF. It's so interesting, like how I've had people in my life, especially even some of my exes, reach out to me, and it's like, what happened to the old Chase? And what they were referring to with old Chase was UDSF Chase, which was before the day I found out that I was pregnant. And then the transformation was complete, if not solidified, on October 17th, 2021, okay? When I broke my foot after failing the Krav Maga belt test. Very painful experience. Very painful experience. So, I became UDUF. And I have been UDUF. Ever since knowing Chris, he's been UDUF the whole time, but I finished my transformation then. And this is what I said, basically, because it was October 17th, 2021. That was what I claim is the beginning of my midlife crisis, was literally that day. And it's really just me transforming into UDUF person. That's basically what it is. And then now I'm just so used to it. My midlife crisis is basically over, and now I'm just focused on personal growth as a UDUF variant of ENTP, right? So again, how you type somebody with octogram, the logic basically is this, is that which pole are they closer to? Are they closer to their shadow pole or their aspiration pole? That determines their cognitive development, if they are UD or SD, okay? For determine how to type someone's cognitive focus is whether or not they're closer to their living virtue or their deadly sin. Deadly sin is unconscious focus. Their living virtue is subconscious focus, okay? And again, that can change. Cognitive focus changes more often than cognitive development. Cognitive development may change one time in a person's life, and that's without trauma. With trauma, it would probably change twice. But most likely, it doesn't change at all. Most likely, it doesn't change at all. Okay? I have 3 children. I've been watching them like a hawk over their entire life and paying huge, close attention to them and understanding their cognitive growth and their development. And not one time have I observed any of my children's cognitive development actually changing, even since the time they were born. Let's look at, you know, I think we'll do, I think we really need to do as well. We'll look at her octogram. I haven't actually talked much about her octogram. So, which I think for like maybe the next episode of Cutting Edge, it will actually be necessary to talk about her octogram for the sake of this episode. So, for the sake of that episode, so we'll see. Anyway, so we have 2 UDF people here of different temples. Basically, I am Heart Temple, Chris is Soul Temple, and you determine a person's temple based on what temple is in their ego. Okay, that's how you determine it. what temples their ego is basically what temple they are, as their 4 sides are this. Now, here's the thing. We're UDUF. So looking at it this way, using purple, so look at it this way. So we got this, we got this, we got this. That's UDUF. Going here to the subconscious, going to the superego. This is what UDUF looks like, okay? Notice how these 3 are linked together. And notice how the subconscious one is completely let alone, okay? This is a problem. This goes to show you that the subconscious between these 2 people, Chase and Chris, our subconscious is really basically entirely abandoned and entirely underused. It is very underused, okay? Now, for me being UDSF before I was UDUF, my subconscious did have some use. But that side of me just basically died. It basically died entirely. So as a result of my subconscious, just not being there, okay? And it has the temple influence. So remember, temple influence. So if heart temple is right here, let's see, what color should I use for temple influence? I'll dang it. Let's see here. So this is hearts. Well, actually, the colors indicate temple influence. So that's fine. So my body temple influence. So the body temple side of my mind, which within my ISFJ side of the mind, even though my ISFJ is still heart temple, it is influenced by body temple, and my subconscious is still the body temple side of my mind. The body temple is the most underdeveloped, underutilized temple within my head. This is why when I have problems in my life, I struggle with gluttony and I struggle with greed more than anything else. I struggle with gluttony and greed. It is a huge struggle, with gluttony being the absolute worst. So UDUF ENTP is the most likely out of all of the ENTPs to be obese. And I've been struggling with obesity the majority of my life. I only just this last year did I lose my man boobs. And I'm almost done getting rid of my love handles, for example. Because I'm working really hard, working out, getting it handled. It's been a huge struggle my entire life with gluttony. I have struggled with it. Greed, not so much. I have not had much of a problem with greed. But the thing is, though, is that greed has ended up becoming a much bigger issue over time for me. Because the further and further I get away from my subconscious, I've noticed the greedier that I get over time. Right? And that can be a big issue, okay? But gluttony absolutely is my problem. Especially when I'm stressed out the most, I have this binging problem that is absolutely out of control. And it takes everything I have to have the self-discipline, that thing that ISFJs are known for, to have the self-discipline to control the body temple influence within my life in order to prevent myself from having gluttonous binging, okay? It's a huge hang-up, okay? And this is just an example. You can apply this analysis to living virtues. What is the living virtue of body temple influence based on this model? What would be the living virtues that I would be missing or struggling with the most, right? What would it be? Well, living virtues that I would be struggling with the most would be purpose, right? Or no, that's origin, excuse me. Not purpose. It would be generativity, right? And generosity, right? Generativity and generosity. My dad has shat on me my whole life because I wasn't generative and didn't have a work ethic. He sees me as like a virus. He sees me as a burden. My father does. And that's how he treats me, right? I get it. So yes, avocado heart, yes, that is correct. This is the blind spot temple. Based on your octogram, your blind spot. Yes, blind spot temple. Okay? The blind spot. My blind spot temple is the body temple. It's why I've struggled with obesity. It's why I've struggled with gluttony. It's why I am struggling with greed. Okay? And then it's also like I am struggling with being sometimes generative. That's also an issue for me. And also struggling with generosity. I am not generous at all. I am that guy, whenever someone's pressuring me to give money to charity, I literally lash out. I cannot deal with it. I hate it. I'm very compassionate, though, because guess what? I still have the living virtue of compassion within my ego, thank God. But when it comes to being generous, that ain't me. I don't do it. I'm not a generous person. I'm just not. Not a generous person. So you have to look at, and also shadow pole and aspiration pole apply here, but I don't want to get into the poles. That's just way too much. Let's just look at deadly sins for now and then a little bit of living virtue. Let's look at Chris. Let's look at Chris Taylor, ENFP, UDUF. His biggest struggle is sloth. Out of all the ENFPs I've met in my life, he's probably the laziest I've ever met. He's probably the laziest, okay? He really, really struggles. Really struggles. He doesn't struggle with pride as much, but it can happen. It absolutely can happen. He often it's way easier for him to let go of his pride than it is sloth. Sloth is definitely the main one. Why would sloth be the main one? Just like gluttony. Why would gluttony be the main one for me, guys? Do you guys know the answer? Do you guys know the answer? I know the answer. Do you guys know the answer? Why is it a UDUF ENTP would struggle more with gluttony than greed? Why? Why is it a UDUF ENFP would struggle more with sloth than pride? Does anyone in the class know the answer? Come on. Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? Yes, Red Robin has the correct answer. The same quadra. Yes. Excellent. So glad. Yes, that is the correct answer. The same quadra. Because the ISFJ subconscious is in the same quadra as the INTP, which is a gluttony type, and the ESFJ, which is a gluttony type. That's why the struggle with gluttony is much harder with greed. Literally, that's why. Greed is a problem for me, but it's very secondary. But gluttony is an absolute issue. Same thing with Chris. Sloth is his major issue, but pride not so much. Because guess what? The sloth types are INFPs and ESTJs, and they are in the same exact quadra as the ENFP ego. That is absolutely correct. Correct. Amazing. Very well done. Okay? So, this is why temple influence is important, and this is why understanding how the octagram can change variance in type and how this can actually change behaviors in various types. And guess what? You could still have very big issues. But yes, out of everything that I've taught in this lecture today, that is the most important point. Because whichever your blind spot temple is, based on your octagram, okay, the deadly sin that you will struggle with the most and the living virtue you will struggle with the most is based on those types within that specific temple, whether or not they share the same quadra with your ego. That's it. That's how you determine it. I'm so impressed with the audience right now. I'm so glad somebody knew that and figured that out. Great work. Very happy with the direction and the growth of this audience. You guys are doing fantastic with getting into like the basics of the science. So, let's make an attempt with Railgun. Let's look at where Railgun is. Okay, let's do. All right, let's get her. Little temple box made right here. Okay, and then we're gonna do. She's an ESTP. All right. And then let's get her colors in there. So, awesome. Let's get her colors filled in. All right. Notice that these colors are exactly the same as Chris's colors because she is Soul Temple. Okay. Soul Temple. And then once again, we have lust versus wrath. Okay. We have vainglory versus envy. Okay. And then we have greed versus gluttony. Okay. And then we have sloth versus pride. Okay. All right. So, let's discuss her octogram. What does that mean? So, her octogram, how do you determine a person's octogram again? You look at the poles for their cognitive development. So, she has idolization and objectification. She is, without a shadow of a doubt, objectification. She is constantly objectifying everything and everybody. There are times where she treats me as if I am an object or a thing and not actually a person, because that's what objectification is all about to Soul Temple Templars. Okay, Soul Temple Templars, objectification. There's shadow pole and their aspiration pole. Aspiration pole is objectification. Shadow pole is idolization, right? So she does not idolize me, she objectifies me, okay? She treats me like an object, right? There is a woman in the community. Her name is Stephanie, who is an INFJ. This is not the one who runs the sexuality sig. This is the other INFJ Stephanie in the Discord group. And that Stephanie is absolutely objectification. So her octogram, half of her octogram, is subconscious development, okay? So she's an SD type, which means is an SD octogram as well. SD, right? But what is her cognitive focus? What is her cognitive focus? So her cognitive focus, okay? What is her cognitive focus, right? So her cognitive focus, so it's basically the deadly sin of lust versus the living virtue of chastity. And I know her so well that she is on the lust side. Big time on the lust side. I have never met someone more jealous in my entire life. So she is SDUF, and jealousy and having a high level of jealousy is proof of being closer to the lust deadly sin side. So she is SDUF. Therefore, let's calculate what her octogram looks like based on this analysis, okay? So, you always have to put in a point for a person's ego. There's always a point in the ego. Always. And we always represent the ego with the same color so that you understand that it is the primary thing. But she is subconscious developed, right? So, she gets a point for subconscious development. Let's actually do this accurately. She gets a point for subconscious development. Absolutely. She is subconscious developed. Great. And then she is unconscious focused. Okay? There you go. Right? So subconscious developed, unconscious focused. So she is looking for 2 parts. And here's another way of, if you guys want to really have something fun to realize from like an origin perspective. So she is looking for 2 parts, intimacy, which is her origin. looking for 2 parts intimacy, right? And then 1 part justification. 1 part justification. Justification. Cool. 1 part justification. So there you go. So that's her octogram. Now, we get into her super ego. What deadly sin does she struggle with the most? What deadly sin is it? Is it greed or is it gluttony? What does she struggle with? She absolutely does struggle with one of these. Well, it is hands down greed. I have never met somebody who struggles with greed more than everything in her life is literally centered around money. When I first met her, her ESFJ best friend literally told me, watch out, she is the biggest tightwad you have ever met. Literally measures her own personal self-worth based on how much money she can save, right? And everything from her point of view is literally whether or not, how much did it cost? She's constantly asking me that all the time. Was it a good deal? Constantly asking me that all the time, every day of my life. Her entire mindset is centered around money or being greedy. I have never met anyone more greedy in my life than Railgun. And as much as she has never met anyone in her life more gluttonous than me. Okay? So it's a huge issue. It's a huge issue. And this is how you can identify people's hang-ups or weaknesses, right? And you could even use this from an ego hacking perspective to exploit them. You could very much easily exploit them. For example, if for some reason I wanted to manipulate Railgun, I would just lean into her greed. It's very easy. Lean into the greed, right? If she wanted to manipulate me, she leads into my gluttony. She does, so you have to watch out. You have to watch out for this stuff, okay? So yeah, gluttony for me, greed for her. These are the deadly sins that we struggle with the most. Sure, yeah, obviously she has a jealousy problem because it's her ego, and can have a wrath issue. Those are definitely there. But greed really screws her up. I can be very vainglorious. I am the most envious person I've ever met. I've yet to meet someone who's more envious than me. And I am insanely gluttonous as a result. And that's a huge problem for myself. And I have to absolutely learn self-discipline to let go of it. She has to actively choose to not be greedy. So greed and gluttony ends up becoming a huge problem within the context of our relationship. And we can enable each other and disable each other, even outright manipulate each other based on these specific hang-ups, okay? This is an example of the power of temple influence and contrasted by the octogram. This is the entire point. This is how it works. You have to be really, really careful with this stuff. This is a whole new level of ego hacking capability right here. A whole new level. Please, please do not do it lightly. It can blow up in your face. But this is it, okay? A huge ego hacking opportunity. Be careful for good and evil, both. Avocado Heart asks, for people who have superego blind spot, neither sins are in the same quadra. The right, you determine it another way. Well, you also have to look at UDSF types as well. UDSF types also have very similar temple influence, okay? And that too can be an issue, all right? it still has superego blind spot. This is why, okay, this is why that when it comes to typical octograms, they are more common, because typically superego blind spot is where a person should have their blind spot, okay, right? It's where they should have it, right? And then SDUF also is similar to that in that regard as well, except SDSF, I believe, I think SDSF, I believe SDSF actually has their shadow as their blind spot, instead of superego blind spot. So it's really weird to have your shadow as a blind spot, and it's really weird to have your it's just nuts, and it's really weird to have your subconscious as a blind spot. But so that's what atypicals look like. Okay, so just so you guys understand, that's literally how it works. So she is all about the greed. Oh my God, but I am all about the gluttony. So yeah. All right. Let's see. Like, how do you decide between greed and gluttony just from observation? Is there another rule? You already missed it earlier, Avocado Heart. You already missed it earlier in the lecture. You decide that based on which of those types that represent that, which dyad basically is closest to what your ego is. So for me, because gluttony and sloth for Chris, those types are in the same quadra as us, and that's why we struggle more so with that deadly sin. Okay, that's how you determine that. So, all right, folks, that completes our episode for the cutting edge of January 2023. Temple Influence meets the Octagram. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed learning about Temple Influence, and I hope you enjoyed learning about Octagram and how it applies, how to type people by Octagram, how to identify a person's hang-ups in terms of deadly sins, living virtue, the blind spot temple within the four sides of their mind, and then also getting a little bit, looking how people's minds work, within my life, basically. So anyway, folks, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next episode next month for the cutting edge, February 2023. With that being said, you folks have a good night. Later.